Come on, Poe. Well, hello everyone. It's Exoman here, and I am joined by my lovely and wonderful son, Walker.
Hey everybody.
Walker is he's awesome. He's 22 years old now. He's a young professional, and he has his own YouTube channel. It's Adamus. Be sure to check it out. He does some beautiful work. But what I want to talk to you all today about is the discipline of being a disciplinarian. And what I just said means a lot, and I'll tell you why. I speak from experience. I've brought people into this world. I've been there at the birth of people, and I've been there at the end when people have died. I've witnessed the gamut of life's experiences in that degree. But today I want to focus on child rearing, and my experience may not be extraordinary, but it is somewhat unusual in that I was the Mr. Mom in our situation.
That's pretty true.
I changed this young man's diapers. Primarily, I was his
Stay-at-home mom.
I was a stay-at-home mom. Yeah, I was working as an actor and an artist at the time. I had a home studio for painting, and I was doing auditioning and doing films and commercials in the Los Angeles area. Anyhow, I had the privilege of raising two wonderful, unique, awesome kids. My son Walker and his older sister Destin, who is now 25, and she's getting ready to buy her first home. She works very hard. They both work very hard. And what I'm getting at is they're thriving, good and decent people. How did they become these kind of people? Well, because they work hard and because they care. But I like to think also because of the way that their mother and I raised them and the things that we did. And she likes to credit me for a lot of it, and a lot of the discipline, basically. And I was not easy on my kids. Right? Would you agree?
No, not really. I remember having friends and thinking, man, I wish that my parents were like their parents. They're so cool. They get to do whatever they want.
Really?
And then I grow up and I see them, and it's like they don't understand how much they missed out on good parenting, really.
Wow.
They had friends rather than parents.
Yeah. Well, that's
which is cool, but it doesn't work that way, really.
Yeah, you can't be your kid's best friends. Well, let's delve into that a little bit. I appreciate that testament, but it was my job to be your parent, and my parents did a very poor job. They did and they didn't. My mother did a good job at loving me and providing love and in that sense security. But there was no structure. There was no real security other than love, and it was scary, and it wasn't something I wanted my kids to experience. And my mother gave me enough, I guess, to know that I wanted something better. And I felt like I had to do something more at putting my kids out there in the world. My kids, it might sound silly and arrogant, but my kids are a gift to the world. They're my gift. And I wanted them to be thriving and loving and helpful and all the wonderful things that we want people to be when they enter into the world and play their part. So let's delve into what I did and what my philosophy is on rearing kids. And it's very basic. It doesn't require a hell of a lot of intelligence. I think it just requires
Understanding.
common sense and understanding, of the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And when you are raising small children, you're basically raising little terrorists. That's what they can be if you don't discipline them, right? So I had a strong hand with my kids. I'll give you the basics of keeping your kids in line. Consistency. And when I said earlier, the discipline of being a disciplinarian, that's what I mean. You have to be disciplined in disciplining your kids. In other words, what you say is the law, and there can be no exception. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to live by that one rule, then you can raise kids, and you can raise good kids. But here's the part that you need to understand. You need to do so lovingly, not with a grudge, not with spite, not with anger, but just do so lovingly. But
understanding that they're just kids and they don't understand just yet, but help them understand.
Yeah, you're trying to help them. Exactly. You're not. I've seen parents who try to do this, but they do it in the wrong way. They're more like the warden. Now, I've said you don't want to be you can't be your kid's best friend, but you also don't want to be the warden. So you want to have a balance with reward and punishment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember those things?
Positive and negative affirmations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do, definitely.
Yeah. So do you remember the ways that we disciplined you?
Yeah, I mean, go to your room for however long and reflect on what you've done.
Yeah.
And I would remember thinking, like, trying so hard to think about what am I doing that's good and what am I doing that's bad, and like,
really, you really thought it through, didn't you?
Like, just at that point, it was just to stay out of timeout. Like, I wasn't really thinking about, like.
But I'm sure that you're well aware that if I hadn't been consistent and I had let you out early or felt guilty, or, that it wouldn't have worked, right?
I would have known you're weak.
Yeah, you would have exploited my weakness, wouldn't you?
Would have been able to break you. But I knew very well that I couldn't.
Do you sort of remember having that feeling, like I wish I could break him?
No.
It was too strong. I
never had that.
I guess in a sense it was overwhelming. I was the authority, and that was that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, did you have the true sense that I loved that at the end of it all, I truly, deeply loved you and cared for you? Good.
Yeah,
good.
Definitely.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. If you can be strong but loving at the same time, there, my friends, is the magic. So, let me tell you, I witnessed people trying to grapple with disciplining their kid, and we'll go into spanking and all that in a second. But I remember one specific story where I was at a friend's house, and this is when my kids were a little bit older. They were probably approaching into their early teens. At least my daughter was. I think he was probably still 9 or 10. But anyhow, this friend, her son, was misbehaving, and she had put him in his room. And we were standing there in the foyer talking, and his room was just down the hall. And he threw something at the wall and at the door of his room. And I was shocked to hear things hitting the wall. You could tell he was just throwing random toys at
shoes.
Or
shoes.
Yeah. And I was standing there looking shocked, and she responded very weakly to this aggression. And she said something to the effect of, "Oh, you stop that now! Don't do that!" And
I'll let you out if you stop.
Yeah. Now, this is years ago, and I don't remember the specifics of the dialogue, but I don't want to get in people's business, but she was her friend, and I knew that I could talk to her, and I said, "Wow, he's being really unruly." And she said, "Well, what would you do?" She invited my participation, and I said, and I took full advantage of that, and I told her what I thought. I said, "Look, if that was my son," he continued to throw things. "If that was my son, I would walk over there, open that door, and tell him in no uncertain terms that if one more thing was lifted and projected at the door or any part of that room, that he would spend the rest of the day in there. But only if I could follow through." I said, you've got to, with these kids, they have to know that you do what you say you're going to do. and you mean it, and you can never falter, because like Walker said, they'll exploit those weaknesses. And I said, if you can spare the time, I would tell him he's in there for an hour. If he wants to be in there for the rest of the day, he can do that. And you give them the sense that it's all up to them. Like, in such a way, we teach our kids that they shape the world. They are masters of their own destiny. That's part of the lesson right there. And what we're doing, the home is a microcosm for the world, for these children. It is. It is their world. When they come into the world, you take them home from the hospital, their home is their world. So you teach them about the world, right? You learned about the world beginning at home, didn't you?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
you learned about how the world was going to treat you. And if you stepped out of line, you were going to pay the consequences.
Yeah, kids really are, they just don't understand. Like, they're not thinking about others' feelings or anything. They're just thinking about what they see and how they feel about it. They don't really understand that you are another being at first, you know? And then they slowly start to understand that.
They start to have
respect.
empathy and respect, and yeah.
That's why, like you were saying, they're terrorists at first, because they don't understand that you're another person.
Yeah.
That feels the same way they do.
So you have to discipline them, and in this process, you're not just getting cooperation. Come on, Poe. You're teaching your kid discipline. You're teaching them how to discipline themselves in life, and how to reap the rewards. Come on, of good behavior. And that's really what we try to do in our lives, is we try to behave. We try to align ourselves with the laws of the universe, right, Walker? And that begins in early childhood. It all starts in we shape the worlds of the men and women that our children will become in the first 3 years of their lives. So what do you want to make? What do you want your children to be? Do you want them to be unruly, emotional, irrational people, or do you want them to be disciplined? And that's how you do it. You have to be consistent, so that and they know that you're in charge, and they know that you are the authority. When you went into a restaurant as a child, if I told you to be quiet, if you were being noisy or unruly, you generally cooperated, didn't you?
I can't stand when kids are screaming and being and like punching their mom in the leg and stuff.
Yeah.
As hard as they can, like actually trying to hurt her. Like, if I just hurt her enough, she'll listen to me and do what I want her to do.
Yeah, it's weakness.
It can't be that way.
Yeah.
Unless you want to deal with that for the rest of your rearing of the child.
Right. Well, I remember a lot of instances like that. I mean, everybody sees it, but I remember we were up in New York for a wedding, and we stopped at a pizza restaurant, and the kids were screaming at the mom and the grandma, give me $1, give me $1. Remember that?
No.
And the parents would say, stop it, and then they would give them $1. So we were watching kids learn that the more obnoxious they behaved, the more they were rewarded. So you teach your kids with your behavior.
Yeah, don't reward bad behavior.
Don't reward.
People think of it as just like, oh, I'll pay them off so that'll stop for now, but then they just want more and more. It's like a greed thing.
It never ends. You can't fill that void, and you can't make it right. You can't make kids right by giving them what they want. It's mostly want when you're kids.
Gotta give them what they need.
Well, that's the gist of it. I appreciate you taking the time to share your feelings on that. And there you go, in the horse's mouth. He's a pretty good young man. So
I'll try.
take it from Walker. Discipline your children, and you will reap great reward. They will reap great reward, and so will society. All right?
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Not for yourself, do it for everyone else.
Exactly. All right. So give me some particulars, Walker, from memory. Do you remember So you said you remember the consistency of punishment.
Yeah.
Of timeout meant timeout.
Yeah, and you just like, when you're in the timeout, you start to think about like, what did I do wrong? And as I grew up a little bit, it kind of like started clicking, and the voices of you guys like saying, now that's not good, you know, like what is good and what is bad. It started like becoming my inner dialogue, sort of. So I kind of started teaching myself and taking what you guys taught me to,
and you would apply that to the world.
Expand on that. Yeah.
So just like you learned language from us, you learned behavioral traits.
Yeah. It's like, what do you want your kids to be talking to themselves about in their heads, you know?
The inner dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you remember spankings?
Yeah, of course I do. I remember laughing at Mom when she tried to spank me, and she got so mad.
I don't ever remember you laughing at me when I tried.
No, not you. You weren't home, so she couldn't be like.
But I know that I spanked you all too, and that was, that was kind of an interesting thing, because I was not spanked properly by my father. He would show up after being gone for a year and just beat the crap out of us and then leave. I didn't want to do that with you all, but there were times, at least in our lives, when I thought, hey, this kid needs a spanking. And but you don't remember a lot of that. You just remember some of it.
Yeah.
Did it affect you? Did it impact you emotionally in any negative, lasting way? Or?
No.
Are you sure?
I'd say it just made me feel more, I don't know, I guess emotional about like negative stuff, you know, like that kind of sits on you a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of, I guess it was kind of a punctuation thing, but I understand that there's a different world now, but and you know, people will call Child Protective Services on their parents and crazy stuff like
I worked with a guy that had that happen to him, and he's a good guy, and
that's awful.
He spanked his kid, and his kid called the cops on him and got him.
I think that sometimes kids need in my world, in my experience, sometimes you guys, it wasn't enough. And like I would put Destin in timeout, and she would come out of her room, and I would say, you do that again, I'm going to spank you, things like that. And just so that we were really, really clear, it backed up the timeout. But I don't know. Some people may not need to do that if
capital punishment of the household.
Corporal punishment. Yeah, exactly. So, all right, interesting thoughts. Thanks for sharing. Anything else you can remember about being disciplined?
No, just glad that I got through it.
Yeah.
Came out the way I am.
Well, me too. I think you would have been a good man no matter what, but it might have been more of a struggle for you.